We're on a mission from God.
And now for something completely different.
Let's get ready to rumble! Yeah, baby, yeah!
This is Pastor Jolly John Lekumsky from St. Paul's Lutheran Church in New Athens, Illinois, and Trinity Lutheran Church in Darmstadt, Illinois. You'd think after 40 years I'd be able to remember that.
I wasn't going to say it, but yeah, you would think so.
You'd think so. And right next to me,
And I am Pastor Matt Youngblood Clark from Ascension Lutheran Church in beautiful South St. Louis.
And this is
Wrestling with the Basics.
All right, so I got to tell you this. You tell me what you think of this. So we went to St. Genevieve for my wife's birthday. We usually do that for anniversaries,
nice.
but it didn't work out this summer. So we said, well, we'll go down there. And so we're in a nice bread and breakfast, the Inn at St. Gem, it's called. And by the way, if you're looking for a good place to go there and tell them that John sent you. Maybe they'll give us a deal the next time we go down there. Because I mean, it's really cool. Because I would get breakfast, but like at 2:00 they serve dessert. And
Whoa!
They have tea. They actually
Very
have tea
nice.
at that point. And then at 5:00 you go back in and they have hors d'oeuvres as well.
Whoa!
So it's kind of like a bed and breakfast and a few
Tea and hors
snackies.
d'oeuvres. Yes.
Yeah. So I in these places, of course, they have extra rolls of toilet paper just in case.
Well, you never know.
Just like here in the studio. I don't know why in our studio they have all the, but I guess
Cases of toilet paper in our studio.
maybe they think we have a need or something. I've never complained about that. But so I'm looking at this roll of toilet paper that's sitting there still in the wrapper, and it says professional series on it. Charmin Extra Soft, but it says professional series.
Good thing you're a professional,
Well,
John.
that's what I'm thinking. Am I qualified even to use this? Are they paying people to use this? I just did not understand. So if anyone out there, maybe someone from the Charmin Company is listening to us, what in the world does it mean that it was the professional series of toilet paper?
You have to undergo rigorous training before using that.
I guess so. I don't know. Or maybe it had to do with opening it. We didn't. The one that was open was enough for us. Maybe if I had to open it, I had to have a special tool or something.
I'm glad you just left it alone. That's the best policy.
Probably was.
Call the innkeeper and ask for their assistance. Could you please open our toilet paper?
And then the other thing I saw that struck me as really strange. So we're in this like candy shop they have down there, and we always get candy for the grandkids. And so they had this display of socks. And they had like these little warning signs over the socks, like, don't let your children look at these, or look at these only if you dare. And I'm thinking, what is it that we need to have trigger warnings about socks? Or what's scarier is what kind of socks are we making that need trigger warnings?
Yeah. Rated R socks.
I guess so. We've talked about this before. I'm embarrassed to take my kids into the Hallmark store unless they get some of the adult cards that are sitting there. Our culture apparently has changed.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, for good or for bad, that's my report from St. Genevieve.
See, every time you leave New Athens, something happens. You have some new story to tell every time.
That's just the story of my life. Well, you have a story to tell, and it's not from St. Genevieve. It's from the Holy Bible, right?
It is.
Okay.
Very good. What an intro. That's great.
All right, now, there's no time for foolishness.
All right. Back down to business.
Is this the professional series now that we're
The
using?
professional series.
Only.
Good thing we're kind of sort of professionals.
That's right.
So what we want to look at Mark chapter 12, if we have professionals following along at home. Mark chapter 12, beginning with verse 38. So we want to start there.
All right. I was wondering about that. Because you said last week you were going to call to mind somebody that Jesus said we should pay attention to.
Yeah. Let's start with a little story, though, first.
Okay.
There's a story about a...
toilet paper?
A toilet paper. Not quite.
Okay. I thought we could have a theme today.
If you would have warned me, I could have come with some good toilet paper stories.
All right.
All right. But this is a story about a church that was having a stewardship campaign.
Okay, cool.
And they had asked people to make pledges and how much they would like to give toward the ministry of the church. And there was one prominent member who didn't pledge anything, really wasn't giving anything.
Oh, what? That's strange.
Yeah, and and they were known to be pretty successful, a person of means, of wealth even. And so a volunteer at the congregation congregation called up the man and said, well, it won't hurt to just call and see if they'd like to, make a donation. So
maybe it was just an oversight.
Yeah. So calls up the member and says, I'm calling on behalf of the church and our stewardship campaign. And would you like to give it this time? And the person says, the man on the other end says, well, are you aware that my mother has dementia and she requires expensive care? And the volunteer said, well, no, I'm sorry, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
And he goes on and he says, well, are you aware that my brother was in an accident and now requires the care of a nurse 24 hours a day? Very expensive. Well, no, sir, I didn't realize that. And the guy goes on, did you know that my sister is a widow and she has 3 young children that need help? And the volunteer said, sir, I'm so sorry. I was not aware of these things. And the guy's not done. He goes on and says, you know what? The gall of you people, if I don't give a dime to them, why should I give any money to you? See, it's a joke.
So, sorry, I swallowed it hook, line, and sinker. I think this is such a sad story.
No,
if I don't give a dime to them,
why should I give a dime to you people at church? So...
Okay, that's a good
so
one.
There's really no lesson to learn here, except, this guy's giving nothing to anyone, right? His own family that's in need, they don't give a dime from him. His own church doesn't get a dime from him either. So that's really the only the point of the story. The other point of the story, I guess, is we have just the opposite case here in Mark's Gospel, Mark chapter 12. Okay. It's not a case of someone giving nothing. It's a case of someone giving everything, giving their all, right? So we want to, before we get to that, though, let's set the scene here, because that's what Jesus does. Okay. So our reading begins with Mark chapter 12, verse 38. And again, to set the scene, Jesus and his disciples are gathered together in Jerusalem. This is after Palm Sunday, so this is during Holy Week. They're in the temple, and they're in the temple courts there, and Jesus and the disciples just sort of seem to be people watching here in the temple courts. So the first group that Jesus mentions, and we can assume perhaps they were there in the temple courts too, are the scribes. So let's read about that.
Could I ask you?
Yeah, go ahead.
This is Holy Week we're dealing with? So this is right before he's going to give up his life on the cross. Just a matter
of days before, Monday, Thursday, Good Friday, and of course then Easter Sunday.
All right.
Yeah.
So we're in the temple, people watching, and we see the scribes.
Yeah, verses 38 through 40.
And in his teaching, and in Jesus' teaching, he said, beware of the scribes who like to walk around in long robes and like greetings in the marketplaces and have the best seats in the synagogues and the places of honor at feasts, who devour widows' houses and for a pretense make long prayers. They will receive the greater condemnation.
Wow. So the scribes, of all people, you would think that they would be, on the good list, right? Yeah.
What is a scribe, by the way?
So, scribe is someone who knows the Old Testament scriptures, okay? So they know the scriptures, they teach the scriptures even. You think they would be, model people. But here Jesus calls them out and says, well, wait a second, though. They may know the scriptures, but they don't live out the scriptures, right? So they're doing things like wearing these long robes, right? Prideful, like the greetings, the best seats. Even worse than that, what else do they do? They seem to be greedy.
See, I was thinking it's not just that they're not giving, but they're actually taking from the widows and the sick sister and all of that stuff.
Yeah, devour widows' houses and for a pretense make long prayers. Devour widows' houses. What's Jesus talking about there?
Well, I don't think this is that whole thing where they had the gingerbread house. I'm going to go with it just on a leap. That's not we're talking gingerbread houses. No. But apparently they were cheating the widows out of their money somehow. Yeah,
so much that they take so much that they're out of house.
Taking their homes.
To take advantage of them. Yeah, exactly.
Do you know that's what they think what was happening with the whole witch trials? Did you hear that? Did you read that article?
Oh, the witch trials. Make accusations to get their
so they could get their property,
interesting.
Yeah. So it's apparently there's been scribes throughout history.
Well, it's kind of this holier than thou type thing, and then using that to
and they're easy to take advantage of because they have no man to represent him. Yeah. They're widows and so forth. You can legally do things. Yep. Sad to say, I think that stuff goes on in our world even today.
Oh, my goodness. The scams that take place, taking advantage of the elderly and others. Oh, boy.
The very people that have the greatest need.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, as we'll look at a little more in just a second, that's so important to keep in mind, especially in first century Israel when
Yes.
this is taking place. You know, today widows, yeah, they may be in need, but boy, in Jesus' day and when this takes place, boy, they're really in need. I mean, they're sort of at the bottom of Israel's social ladder, right? And especially if they don't have someone to care for them,
Right.
they're destitute. I mean, they have very little, if anything. There's no Social Security. There's no 401k or Medicare. You know, they're just on their own.
Well, and without a husband, they have no legal representation either.
Yeah.
You know, that's why that other parable is so striking about the woman who comes to the judge and won't let go or stop until he does something for her, because literally that's what you'd have to do. Because the judge could simply say, "Well, you don't have any legal representation. I don't." Which, don't you think that's probably why the scribes took advantage of these women too?
And I think it just shows how despicable that is too, though. That they were easy pickings.
Well, but see, here's what they would think. They would say, "Oh, well, they're a widow. Obviously, they've done something wrong. They must have sinned. God's punishing them. So I can help God out here."
Okay, well, yeah. So that's the other wrinkle in this whole thing is this mindset among the Jews at this time too, that if someone is wealthy, a person of means, that means God has blessed them, that they have favor with God, right? And wait a second here. Jesus comes along and he turns that whole idea upside down.
Beware
right?
of the scribes. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So lots of different factors at play here, and I think they all really do help shed better light on this portion of the story, but also what's to come too. So Jesus and his disciples, still people watching, and there's another group of people other than the scribes there in the temple courts, and Jesus comments on them. So let's go to read just verse 41.
And let me just echo the final words.
Yeah.
They will receive the greater condemnation of the scribes. All right, now, as Jesus sat opposite the treasury and watched the people putting money into the offering box, many rich people put in large sums.
All right, well, let's stop there. So, just to kind of get a picture of this in our heads. So, in the temple courts, and there would have been 13 different trumpet-shaped receptacles there for people to put their offering in. And so these rich people, these people of means, are coming in, and they are putting money in those offering boxes. And it's a very public thing, really, when you think about that. It's not just you pass the plate and you just kind of put in whatever during worship, and you pass it to the next person.
2 or 3 times and then stick it underneath.
That's right. Or, you put it in an envelope all together and no one even knows what you put in it.
That's right.
It might be empty. Who knows? But this is pretty public, and they're probably bringing coins here. So they're pouring these in these boxes, and it probably sounds like, the payout of a jackpot at a slot machine.
That's what I was thinking. Ching, 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 ching. Yeah.
And people are taking notice. People are taking notice, I'm sure. It certainly seems Jesus and the disciples are taking notice.
Oh, yeah. Look at that guy. Oh, wow. That's a lot of money he put into that horn.
Yep. Many rich people put in large sums, all right? But that's not the person that Jesus draws their attention to. As everyone's looking at these rich people with wide eyes, how much they're putting in. Wow, look at that guy. Whoa, he must be really well off. Jesus, no, don't pay attention to them. In the next few verses, he intentionally draws the attention of the disciples to someone else that probably no one else is paying any attention to except Jesus.
Yeah, in fact, I can probably see. Step aside there. Step aside. We got this important person. Well, see, you did that whole James thing on us, didn't you?
Isn't
that
right.
James
That's
so
right.
the rich guy comes
every
in.
moment of it.
Come on in, rich guy. Come on, get up real close to the offering basket here. You poor widow, you can just stand in the back there. We'll get to you later.
Yeah. Well, we're like that, aren't we, John? I mean, we're impressed by numbers.
Yeah.
We do things like you ever go to the Muni or something, you get the playbill, and you can see how much the donors gave, and their names are printed. Whoa, look how much they gave. But even in churches, and maybe this is more or less a thing of the past, but the church is even printing the names. Did you experience that?
They did that in my vicarage congregation. It's the first time I ever saw that.
The names of individuals and even families, and the dollar amount, what they give an offering. I mean, that's I think that's pretty rare nowadays, I would imagine. But again, that's I don't know if that's a good idea. One, because, and perhaps mainly, it doesn't take into account this idea of proportional giving.
Yeah.
If someone is wealthy and they're given much, and boy, they're at the top of the list, that might just be a small fraction of what they could give. And yet, if someone's at the bottom of that list and as a meager amount, they may be given a substantial amount of their income to the work of the church, but it's just not reflected there. So, boy, I don't know if that's a good idea. And plus, there's admonitions and even not know what your left hand know what your right hand's doing in terms of giving. The scripture is pretty clear about that. But anyway, it's kind of interesting that we are still today kind of impressed by the rich people and how much they might pour into the offering basket.
Well, and like you said, everything you look at, every charity, every organization, it's kind of set up that way that if you make a big donation, we'll name the building after you, or your name goes up the top in the program and everything. It is pretty much how the worldly system is set. Yeah. It does remind me of a prayer I've often spoke to God. I prayed this fervently just a few weeks ago when what was it, up to like $1 billion? Remember the
Mega Millions?
Yeah, oh, Lord, give me the $1 billion. Oh, the good things I would do with that $1 billion. And then the Lord says, you're not doing real well with what I've given you now. Why would I think you'll do any better if I give you $1 billion?
Multiply the problems.
How it goes, yeah. So anyway, more? Where do we go from here? Do you want to read about the one who really is the important one?
This is what we're building up to, right? So let's press on here to verses 43 through 44. Jesus calls his disciples.
And a poor widow came and put in 2 small copper coins, which make a penny. So like a half penny each.
Yeah.
Wow. And he called his disciples to him and said to them, truly I say to you, this poor widow has put in more than all those who are contributing to the offering box. For they all contributed out of their abundance. But she, out of her poverty, has put in everything she had, all she had to live on.
Yeah. So who gives more here? This poor widow that puts in 2 little copper coins, next to nothing, the smallest amount really that someone could give, or the rich who are pouring in the cash? Well, we would say the rich, right?
Sure.
Obviously, the rich are giving more, but that's not what Jesus says, right?
No.
Jesus looks at the whole thing differently and says that she has put more in, right? And that's because Jesus is looking at this widow, and she sees that they're giving out of their abundance.
Right.
She's giving out of her poverty, right? They're giving, and they have a whole lot left for themselves left over. She's giving, she has nothing left for herself. They're giving some, but she's giving all. Talk about proportional giving. She's giving 100% of what she has. She gives it all, which is incredible, right?
Yeah, and so like you said, that's the problem. If we would post what everyone gives, it really would not tell us what the value of their gift is, because we don't know what it is they started with and how much, I like what you said, how much they've got left over.
Yeah,
I had $1 billion. I'd probably give the church $1 million, but that means I'd have 999 million still for myself.
Still left over. Yeah, exactly. And then that's the woman's just the opposite. Okay, so that's wonderful. The woman's giving something to celebrate.
So
right?
The lesson is that we need to give 2 pennies. Let's double what the widow gave. Not just 1 cent, but 2 cents.
Oh boy, wait.
Is that the lesson?
Wait, no. I think there's a couple different lessons, perhaps. But one is, and I want to see what you think about this, John. So, right before this, Jesus is criticizing the Sadducees, and he's saying they're devouring the houses of Galilee, women like this, right? Widows.
Yes, exactly.
So I wonder, as Jesus sees her put in everything to the offering, I wonder if in some ways Jesus might be just a little bit saddened by it, because maybe she's doing this because that's the situation
they've left her in.
Yeah.
I can see that.
That she's almost being forced to do this because they said, you need to do this. You need to give. And she gives away everything. Yeah. So, maybe she's in poverty because of the scribes, but maybe she's even given the last of what she has because of the scribes' teaching. Kind of interesting to think about.
It is. I never thought about the connection between those 2 stories, but they come back to back. So obviously they're designed that way. Yeah.
Now I don't want to criticize the widow here, and Jesus seems to be praising the widow.
Yep.
Okay,
look at her.
And look at her. Take notice of her, and really lifting her up as a positive example. Okay, so I don't want to deny that, but I think that is interesting. But I think from this widow we can learn some things. So what does Jesus want us to do? Does he want us to just give, like you said, 2 pennies, double the amount, or doubly as good?
The model of the widow.
Or does he want us to liquidate all of our assets, on the other hand, our checking account, clear out our
I
safe
don't think
deposit
that's what he
box,
wants either.
and bring it next Sunday and plop it in the offering plate. I don't think that's it either.
Well,
we could do it.
Yeah, if people want to do that, it's St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 900 Bellshaw in New Athens. If you're thinking of doing that, we're probably the church you want to come and do that at.
Yeah, that's right. You have extra deep offering plates there at St. Paul's. Right. There's room enough. So
bring a lot of coins. We don't care.
So we could do that, okay?
Yeah.
But Jesus wants more than that, right?
Yeah.
He wants everything. He wants our whole self.
That's the problem with Jesus,
and that's
isn't it?
Yeah. And it makes sense because he's redeemed all of us, right?
Yep. And he gave it all the stuff to begin with.
Exactly. So when our stewardship, okay, our management of the gifts he gave us in the first place, that extends beyond just Sunday morning worship.
Yeah.
That extends beyond just what we put in the offering plate when it passes by. Now, how we use the gifts and our times, our talents, our treasure, everything that we have throughout the week, throughout every day, and the vocations and callings we have, that's what Jesus is calling us to do, to give our all to him all the time, right?
But that's hard to do, though, Matt. Now you've asked me to do something that I'm not really capable of doing. Trust me, I'm going to keep some back for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the only motivation we have for doing it, because we wouldn't even want to do that, to be honest, right? The only motivation we have and what what motivates here for us as those stewards is the one who gave his all for us. And that's what it all goes back to, is when Jesus gave his all for us in his life. Though he was rich, he became poor so that we might be rich, as 2 Corinthians says. And I think it's interesting, too. As Jesus is in the temple, I think of how Jesus grew up in poverty.
Oh, yeah.
And I wonder if, as he sees this widow, if he's thinking back to when he went to that temple, although he didn't remember it, when he was an infant still, for his presentation, Mary's purification. And remember what they give?
2 doves.
Two doves.
That's the minimum, bare minimum.
Because they can't afford to give the preferred sacrifice of a lamb, and so they give these 2 doves. Yeah. They're like this widow, the Mary and Joseph, as they come in. And so just the point being, Jesus knows what it's like, right?
Yeah.
And he grows up in poverty, and he grows up without a house or a home as he preaches and teaches as an adult, and then he gives his all then finally on the cross. And because he gave his all for us and redeemed us fully, that's our motivation for giving to him.
Well, and I'm thinking, she must have had a tremendous faith in the Lord to be willing to give up those last 2 coins. She must have thought, somehow, God, I know you're going to provide for me. You'll take care of me. We could get my wife Lynn on here, because she knew what it was to live in poverty for some time. She was her first husband had left her and everything, and she said that, though. It was a funny thing. She would pray. In fact, she said she would go over to the altar. I wish you could hear her tell it, because she tells it so well. And she'd just lay the bills there on the altar, say, Lord, I don't know what to do. You got to take care of them. And inevitably, something would happen. A check would come in the mail, something that she'd forgotten about, or somebody would give them something, and it would all be taken care of. So,
and I think, when we look at this widow, I think that I like to picture her as she gives. She's doing it with a smile on her face.
Yeah,
this trust
the
that
Lord
God's
loves a cheerful giver.
There's a joy there in giving, and you hear stories where people have concerns. Well, you can't afford to give offering. Just keep it for yourself, and the response, sometimes is along the lines of, But don't take my joy away from me.
That's right. I
want to give those last 2 coins. Lynn wanted to give. That offering on the altar. Don't take that joy of giving away from me. And we think of those, that have so much more. And sometimes we are stingy in our giving and don't have that joy. But I like to think of that woman as giving those last 2 coins even with joy.
And it occurs to me that also provides us then that example, too, that we ought to look around the people that aren't doing so well. And maybe those are the people we should be paying attention to, and we should be out loving and caring and helping for them, too, right? I was hungry and you fed me. I was naked and you clothed me, and what have you.
Yeah, I wish we knew the rest of the story here. What happened next? Did Jesus talk to that woman? Did the disciples help provide for her? What happened next? Or did God work through someone else to do that? What happened next? But anyway, that's what we do know, and what a great account for us as Jesus draws our attention to this widow, just as he drew the disciples' attention.
And this has been
Wrestling with
the Basics.